Welcome to Crossdressing Stories. Here, we share personal stories, celebrate self-expression. If you're on your own journey or simply curious, you've found your community. Subscribe and join the conversation.
The first thing I remember is the color blue. Not the friendly blue of a summer sky, or the deep, thoughtful blue of the ocean, but a cold, aggressive, strobing blue that sliced through the darkness and smeared itself across my face. It was the color of getting caught. I was in the back of a police cruiser, my hands cuffed behind me so tightly the metal teeth of the restraints were biting into the soft skin of my wrists. My shoulder was pressed against the unyielding plastic of the door, my cheek against the cool, grimy window. Outside, the world was a watercolor painting left out in the rain streaks of red and blue light bleeding into the inky black of 2 a.m. On the seat beside me, a cardboard box sat like a silent accusation. A PlayStation 5. It was a monument to the stupidest decision of my entire 13-year and 11-month life. The bitter irony was that I had never even touched it. I hadn't touched anything inside the store. My only crime was standing outside, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird, while my friends did the real work. It had all started 48 hours earlier, on a sticky Thursday afternoon that smelled of melting asphalt and desperation. School had been out for a week, and summer was already stretching into a vast, empty desert of boredom. My mom was working a double shift at the diner, which meant my supervision consisted of a note on the fridge that said, "Don't burn the house down, pizza money on the counter." That's when Kevin called. Kevin was 16, with the kind of easy, swaggering confidence that I both admired and feared. He drove a beat-up old Mustang that always smelled faintly of gasoline and cheap air freshener. To a kid like me, a kid with two soft cheekbones and hair that was always a little too long, Kevin was the epitome of cool. "Hey, Ethan," he'd said, his voice crackling over the phone. "Me and Mark are gonna hang out tonight. You in?" Of course, I was in. I was always in. Being in with Kevin and Mark meant I wasn't a total social outcast. It meant I had a place, however precarious, in the high school food chain. We ended up at the park, sitting on the swings long after the little kids had gone home. Mark, who was 17 and even more intimidating than Kevin, was tossing a half-empty can of energy drink from hand to hand. It was one of those garish, oversized cans that promised to give you the energy of a hummingbird on a caffeine drip. "You know what's lame," Mark said, taking a long swallow. "Working all summer for minimum wage just to buy a new console." "Tell me about it." Kevin agreed, kicking at the wood chips under his feet. "By the time you save up enough, the PS6 will be out." They both looked at me. I felt a familiar knot of anxiety tighten in my stomach. This was how it always started. They would talk in circles, their words like stones thrown into a pond, and I was supposed to watch the ripples and figure out what they really meant. "My cousin works at that big electronics store over on Route 9, Mark said, his voice dropping a little. "He told me their back door lock is a joke. You could probably pop it with a credit card." I swallowed hard, the taste of cheap pizza I'd had for dinner suddenly sour in my mouth. So I asked, trying to sound casual, like I was just a part of the conversation. Kevin grinned, a sharp, predatory flash of teeth in the twilight. "So, we're gonna go get ourselves an early Christmas bonus." He tossed the nearly empty energy drink can to me. "Here, finish this. You look like you're about to fall asleep." My hands were shaking as I took the can. It was cold and slick with condensation. I didn't want it, but I took a sip anyway. The liquid was sickly sweet and metallic. It tasted like a bad idea. "We're not gonna, steal something, are we?" The words felt foolish as soon as they left my lips. Mark laughed, a short barking sound. "Relax, kid, it's a multi-million-dollar corporation. They won't even notice. We just need a lookout. Someone to stand by the corner and text us if a car comes. That's all. Easy." He made it sound so simple, so harmless. Just stand there. Be a part of the team. For a kid who spent most of his life feeling invisible, the offer was a powerful drug, They weren't asking me to break the door or grab the merchandise. They were just asking me to belong. And that's how I ended up on a dark street corner at 1 a.m, my phone clutched in my sweaty palm, watching the back of an electronics store. I finished the energy drink, my heart racing from the caffeine and the adrenaline. I crushed the can in my hand, the aluminum crinkling in the otherwise silent night, and I tossed it into the bushes. A tiny piece of litter, a huge mistake. My DNA, my fingerprints, my presence, all sealed in a cheap aluminum tomb. I never even saw them get the door open. 1 minute they were shadows fumbling with something. The next they were gone. The silence that followed was louder than any alarm. It stretched and stretched until it was a thin screaming wire inside my head. 5 minutes passed. 10. Then, the silence was shattered by the wail of a siren. I didn't wait. I just ran. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs felt like jelly. I didn't look back. I thought I'd gotten away. The police showed up at my house the next day. They were surprisingly gentle. They had the crushed energy drink can in a plastic bag. They said they found my prints on it. They said a silent alarm had been tripped. They said Kevin and Mark had been caught red-handed a block away, each holding a brand new PlayStation 5. And since I was there, I was an accomplice. My mother's face was a mask of disbelief that crumbled into a landscape of devastation. I'd never seen her cry like that. Her sobs were ragged, torn from the deepest part of her, and each one felt like a physical blow. The shame was a heavy, suffocating blanket. It was worse than the handcuffs, worse than the cold blue lights. Because of my age and my clean record, the judge went easy on me. No juvenile detention, just a hefty fine, mandatory community service, and 2 years of probation, but the real sentence was handed down by my mother. The morning after the court hearing, she sat me down at the kitchen table. Her eyes were red-rimmed and puffy, but her voice was steady, forged from sleepless nights and pure desperation. "Ethan," she began, her hands wrapped around a mug of coffee she wasn't drinking. "I love you. You know that." "Right." I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. "But I don't know you right now. I don't know the boy who would do this. And I can't have you hanging around Kevin and Mark this summer. I can't risk it." She took a deep, shaky breath. "I called your Aunt Claire. You're going to spend the summer with her, all of it, from tomorrow until the day before school starts." Aunt Claire? I hadn't seen her in 3 years. She lived 3 states away, in a town I'd only visited once when I was 10. She was my mother's older sister. But they were polar opposites, where my mum was practical and down-to-earth. Claire was glamorous. She was a former ballet dancer who now owned a boutique. She was all flowing scarves and exotic perfume and dramatic pronouncements. The idea of spending a whole summer with her was terrifying. "Mum, no," I pleaded. "I can't. What about my friends? What about everything?" "What friends?" "Ethan," she shot back, her voice sharp with pain. "The ones who let you take the fall. The ones who had you standing lookout while they committed a felony. They're not your friends." Her expression softened again, the anger draining away, leaving only exhaustion behind. "You need a change of scenery. You need to get away from here, to clear your head. It's for your own good. It's all arranged." There was no arguing. The finality in her voice was absolute. My summer, my life as I knew it, was over. I was being exiled. The next day, my mom drove me to the bus station. The ride was silent, thick with all the things we couldn't say. She hugged me tightly before I got on, her embrace fierce and desperate. "Be good, Ethan," she whispered into my hair. "Please, just be good." As the bus pulled away from the station, I saw my reflection in the window. The court hearing, the shame, the fear it had all settled onto my features, carving out new lines of worry and regret. I saw a scared boy with a face that still held the roundness of childhood. But my eyes looked ancient. They were apologetic eyes, the kind that were already saying sorry for whatever mistake I was going to make next. The bus picked up speed, and my hometown disappeared behind me. I was heading toward a place of pastel colors and floral scents. A world run by my theatrical aunt and my older, impossibly perfect cousin. Sophia, I was leaving the world of boys like Kevin and Mark behind. But as I stared at my own reflection, at the two soft cheekbones and the eyes that looked like they were apologizing for existing, I had a sinking feeling that I wasn't leaving my problems behind. I was just taking them on the road. The bus ride was a 9-hour purgatory of stale air and the monotonous hum of tires on asphalt. When I finally stumbled off in the lakeside town of Silver Creek, my legs felt like they were filled with static. The air here was different. It was clean and sweet, smelling of pine needles and water and money. Aunt Claire's house was a 10-minute cab ride from the station, and with every turn, the houses got bigger and the lawns got greener. Her house wasn't just a house. It was a mansion, a 3-story pastel pink Victorian confection that looked like a dollhouse for a giant. It had a wraparound porch with a white wooden swing, turrets with pointed roofs, and stained glass windows that glittered like jewels in the late afternoon sun. My mom's 2-bedroom apartment could have fit into the foyer. The heavy oak door swung open before I even had a chance to ring the bell. A girl stood there, silhouetted by the light from inside. For a second, I didn't recognize her. The last time I'd seen my cousin Sophia, she was 14 and had braces. Now, at 17, she was something else entirely. She was tall and slender, with long, honey-blonde hair that fell in perfect waves over the shoulders of a shimmering satin robe. Her face was a collection of perfect angles, and her eyes, the same warm brown as my mom's, were sharp and intelligent. "You must be Ethan," she said. Her voice was smooth and low, like honey. She wasn't smiling. Exactly. She was assessing. Her gaze swept over me, from my scuffed sneakers to my rumpled t-shirt to my too long auburn hair. It felt like being X-rayed. I could feel myself shrinking under her scrutiny. "Hi, Sophia," I mumbled, hoisting my duffel bag onto my shoulder. "Mom's in the back, on the phone with a supplier," she said, stepping aside to let me in. "Follow me. I'll show you your room." The inside of the house was just as overwhelming as the outside. Everything was white and gold and pink. A grand staircase with a polished mahogany banister swept upward. The air smelled of vanilla and roses. It was the cleanest place I had ever been in my life. Sophia led me up the stairs, her satin robe whispering against the plush runner. "We put you in the guest room," she explained, her voice echoing slightly in the cavernous hall. "It's at the end of the hall here. It has a bit of a theme. I hope you don't mind." She pushed open a white door with a crystal knob. The room was huge, with a canopy bed draped in sheer pink fabric. The walls were a pale rose color. The furniture was all white and gold, and there was a vanity table with a 3-paneled mirror and a fluffy stool that looked like a giant cotton ball. Porcelain dolls with glassy eyes and unnervingly perfect smiles were arranged on shelves along one wall. It was very, very pink. "This was my old doll room when I was a kid," Sophia said, leaning against the doorframe, a small, knowing smirk playing on her lips. "Mom never had the heart to change it." "It's nice," I lied, dropping my bag on the thick pink rug. It felt like I had walked into a trap made of perfume and estrogen. "Try to keep it clean," she said, her eyes flicking to my dusty sneakers. "Mom's a bit of a neat freak." "Dinner is at 7. She turned and walked away, her footsteps silent on the carpet, leaving me alone with the silent, staring dolls. I spent the next hour unpacking, trying to carve out a small masculine territory in the overwhelmingly feminine space. I put my worn copy of a fantasy novel on the nightstand and my beat-up headphones next to it. It was a futile effort. The room seemed to absorb my things, neutralizing their boyishness with its sheer, unadulterated pinkness. Aunt Claire finally appeared, sweeping into the room like a character in a play. She was tall and impossibly elegant, with fiery red hair piled on top of her head and a flowing caftan that billowed around her. She smelled like gardenias. "Ethan, darling," she exclaimed, pulling me into a hug that was all sharp angles and expensive perfume. Look at you. You're practically a man. Oh, your poor mother. I told her you should have come to me sooner. We'll get you straightened out in no time. Her words were kind, but they carried an undercurrent of something else. Something that made the hairs on my arms stand up. It was the same look Sophia had given me a project. I wasn't just a nephew staying for the summer. I was a problem to be solved. The next few days were a blur of awkward adjustment. Aunt Claire's house ran on a schedule as precise and demanding as a ballet. Meals were served at specific times, with specific cutlery. There was a way to fold towels, a way to place shoes in the mudroom, a way to exist that was completely alien to me. On the third day, Claire announced we were going grocery shopping. The supermarket was one of those massive, brightly lit places with aisles that went on for miles. Claire pushed the cart with a dancer's grace, selecting organic vegetables and artisanal cheeses while I shuffled behind her like a sullen troll. Darling, be a dear and go grab a carton of oat milk. It's over in the dairy section, she said, handing me a $20 bill. I navigated the maze of aisles, found the dairy section, and grabbed the milk. On my way back, I took a wrong turn. I found myself in an aisle I'd never intentionally walked down in my life. It was the pharmacy and personal care section. One side was all deodorant and shaving cream for men. The other side was a different universe. It was a wall of soft colors: pinks, lavenders, baby blues. It was the lingerie section. There were packages of underwear, bras in all shapes and sizes, and silky nightgowns folded neatly behind clear plastic. My eyes, of their own accord, were drawn to one item in particular. It was a training bra, a simple, unpadded thing in a delicate shade of lavender satin. It had a tiny white bow in the center. I don't know why it caught my eye. It was just a piece of fabric, but something about it, the softness, the sheer girlness of it, was mesmerizing. My heart started to beat a little faster. The store was mostly empty. My aunt was half a dozen aisles away. On a strange, irresistible impulse, I reached out. My fingers, rough and calloused from years of climbing trees and gripping handlebars, brushed against the satin. The sensation was electric. It was softer than anything I had ever touched. A jolt, like a tiny spark of static electricity, shot up my arm. I snatched my hand back as if I'd been burned, my face flushing with a hot, prickly shame. I looked around wildly, convinced someone had seen me. A stock boy was arranging cereal boxes at the far end of the aisle, oblivious. I practically ran back to my aunt, my heart pounding in my chest. I felt guilty and confused, like I had committed some strange secret crime. That night, I couldn't sleep. The memory of that half-second touch kept replaying in my mind. The cool, impossible softness of the lavender satin. The sudden, inexplicable jolt of, what curiosity, excitement. It was a feeling I couldn't name. And that scared me more than anything. The house was silent. The porcelain dolls on my shelves seemed to be watching me, their painted-on smiles full of judgment. I pulled out my phone, the screen a bright rectangle in the darkness. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I typed the words before I could stop myself. Why do boys like girl clothes? The search results flooded the screen. Forums, articles, personal blogs. I clicked on a link, then another, and another. I fell down a rabbit hole of stories from people who felt the same strange pull I had. They talked about the feel of different fabrics: satin, silk, lace. They talked about the thrill of secrecy, the shame, the confusion, and the strange sense of rightness that came from wearing something forbidden. I read for hours, my phone hidden under the pink canopy of the bed. With every story I read, the knot of shame in my stomach loosened just a little, replaced by a terrifying electric curiosity. It was like discovering a secret room inside myself that I never knew existed. A room filled with soft fabrics and delicate colors. A room I was both terrified to enter and desperate to explore. I finally fell asleep just as the first hint of dawn was turning the sky from black to gray. My dreams were a confused jumble of strobing blue lights, my mother's tear-streaked face, and a flash of lavender satin, soft and cool against my skin. The summer was just beginning, and I was already more lost than I had ever been in my life. Sophia was gone for the weekend. She had a 3-day intensive at a dance camp an hour away, a fact she had mentioned with an air of casual importance at dinner the night before. "It's for the top dancers in the state," she'd said, spearing a piece of asparagus with surgical precision. "We're workshopping a new contemporary piece." Her absence left a noticeable void in the house. The air felt lighter, the silence less judgmental. Aunt Claire was busy at her boutique, a chic little shop downtown called En Pointe that sold dancewear and high-end lingerie. She had a big summer sale to prepare for, and told me she'd be gone most of the day. "There's leftover chicken in the fridge for lunch." "Darling," she'd called out as she breezed out the door in a cloud of jasmine perfume. "Don't burn the house down." The same words my mom always used. For a moment, a pang of homesickness hit me so hard, it felt like a punch to the gut. I missed my small, messy apartment. I missed the comfortable anonymity of my old life, where the biggest risk I took was what I chose to wear out of my own closet. Here, I felt like a ghost, haunting the edges of someone else's perfect life. I wandered through the silent, sun-drenched rooms, my stockinged feet sinking into the plush white carpets. The house was a museum of femininity, and I was its sole, unworthy visitor. Eventually, my aimless wandering led me upstairs, to the hallway outside Sophia's room. Her door was slightly ajar. I'd never been inside. It was her sacred space, and I knew instinctively that it was off-limits. But the house was empty. Claire wouldn't be back for hours. Sophia was miles away, pirouetting in a mirrored studio. The thought, insidious and thrilling, slithered into my mind. Just a peek. My heart started to pound, a familiar rhythm of fear and curiosity. I told myself it was wrong. It was an invasion of privacy. It was the same kind of stupid, impulsive decision-making that had landed me here in the first place. But the pull was too strong. It was the same pull I'd felt in the lingerie aisle at the grocery store, magnified 1,000 times. I pushed the door open. Sophia's room was even more intensely feminine than the rest of the house. The walls were a soft cream color, and one was covered in a sprawling floral wallpaper. Her bed was a fortress of pillows and plush throws. A vanity table was cluttered with a dazzling array of bottles, pots, and brushes. But what drew my eye? What made the air leave my lungs in a rush? Was the door on the far side of the room a walk-in closet? I moved as if in a dream, my feet carrying me across the room. I reached for the handle, my hand trembling slightly, and pulled it open. It was like stepping into a magazine. Clothes were organized by color, a rainbow of silks, cottons, and cashmeres. Shoes were lined up on slanted shelves, a legion of sandals, heels, and ballet flats. The air inside smelled of cedar and Sophia's perfume, a sweet floral scent that was everywhere in this house. I was trespassing. I should have turned around, closed the door, and gone back to the safety of my pink guest room. But I couldn't. My eyes scanned the racks, searching for something, though I didn't know what. And then I saw them. On a low shelf, folded in neat, colorful stacks, was her underwear. It was a kaleidoscope of lace and satin, of delicate patterns and tiny bows. My breath caught in my throat. This was so much more real, so much more forbidden than the sterile packages in the store. This was hers. My hand moved on its own, hovering over the piles. My fingers ghosted over a lacy red thong, a floral-printed bikini cut. And then they stopped. They stopped on a pair of simple, pale pink hipster panties. They were made of the smoothest, most lustrous satin I had ever seen, with 3 tiny white bows running up one side. They looked impossibly soft. The war inside my head was deafening. Don't do it. This is sick. This is wrong. But another voice, a quieter, more seductive whisper, drowned it out. No one will ever know just for a second just to see what it feels like. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely unfold them. The satin was cool and heavy in my palms. I kicked off my sneakers and peeled off my jeans and boxers. My movements clumsy and rushed. I stood there, in the middle of Sophia's closet, in just my t-shirt, my pale, skinny legs covered in goosebumps. I stepped into the panties. One leg at a time. The sensation was immediate and overwhelming. The cool, slick satin slid up my hairless legs. I'd never been a particularly hairy kid, and it felt like being touched by water. It was a feeling so alien and so intimate that it made my head spin. I pulled them up over my hips. The fabric cupped me in a way my boxers never did. A gentle, snug embrace that was both restrictive and strangely comforting. The elastic waistband, trimmed in delicate lace, settled against my skin, and the slight tug as it snapped into place sent a shiver straight down my spine. My heart was hammering, a frantic, wild drumbeat that I was sure the neighbors could hear. I looked down. The smooth pink satin stretched across my front, creating a surprisingly flat, gentle curve. My boy parts were still there, of course, but they were contained, hidden, smoothed over. The sight of it was dizzying. Guilt crashed over me, followed by a tidal wave of pure, unadulterated thrill. Then the guilt came back, stronger this time. And then, for one dizzying, terrifying moment, there was peace, a strange sense of rightness. Emboldened, my eyes scanned the closet again. They landed on a nightgown hanging from a padded satin hanger. It was a baby blue baby doll, the kind of thing I'd only ever seen in movies. It was made of a sheer, floaty chiffon, with a high waistline just under the bust, and a short, ruffled hem. Before I could second-guess myself, I pulled my t-shirt over my head and slipped the nightgown on. The chiffon was weightless, a cloud of fabric against my skin. The straps were thin, like ribbons, on my shoulders. The empire waist sat awkwardly high on my flat chest. But I didn't care. The hem brushed against the middle of my thighs, and the sensation of the soft ruffles against my bare skin made me shiver again. There was a full-length mirror mounted on the back of the closet door. I turned to face it, my heart in my throat. The boy in the mirror was gone. In his place was a strange, slender creature, with my face, but not my body. A creature with soft auburn hair falling around its shoulders, wearing a wisp of blue chiffon and a hint of pink satin. The lines of my body were blurred, softened. My shoulders looked less broad. My hips subtly curved by the flow of the fabric. I lifted a hand to my chest, my fingers tracing the line where the nightgown's bodice met my skin. A single, whispered word escaped my lips. I look pretty. The sound of my own voice saying that word, that forbidden, impossible word, shattered the spell. A wave of nausea and self-loathing washed over me. What was I doing? Who was this person in the mirror? I wanted to rip the clothes off, to scrub the feel of satin from my skin, to run back to my room and forget this ever happened. I wanted to die. And that's when I heard it. The sound of the front door opening downstairs. Panic, cold and absolute, seized me. Claire. She was back. She was back early. I scrambled, my mind a blank slate of terror. I had to get the clothes off, get my own clothes back on, but my fingers felt clumsy and useless. I fumbled with the thin straps of the nightgown, my breath coming in short, panicked gasps. Footsteps on the stairs. Claire's voice. Followed by another. Sophia's. I just felt a twinge in my ankle. So Coach sent me home early, Sophia was saying. It's nothing. Really. But better to be safe. They were coming up the stairs. They were coming down the hall. Get out, hide. My body wouldn't move. I was frozen in front of the mirror. A deer in the headlights. A boy dressed in his cousin's nightgown and panties. The door to Sophia's bedroom swung open. I heard a gasp. I squeezed my eyes shut, waiting for the yelling, the anger, the disgust, waiting for the phone call to my mother, waiting for my life to be well and truly over. Silence. A thick, heavy silence that lasted an eternity. Slowly, I forced myself to open my eyes and look at the reflection in the mirror. Behind me, framed in the closet doorway, stood Aunt Claire and Sophia. Sophia's hand was covering her mouth, her eyes wide with something that looked like shock. But it wasn't angry shock, it was something else. Aunt Claire, however, was not shocked. Her face was perfectly calm. She took in the scene, me, the nightgown, the mirror, the open drawers with a slow, deliberate gaze. And then she did something I never would have expected in a million years. She smiled. It wasn't a kind smile, or a forgiving smile. It was a smile of pure, unadulterated triumph. It was the smile of someone whose wildest, most secret wish had just walked, stumbled, and fallen right into her lap. Then Sophia let out a sound, a high-pitched, excited noise that was halfway between a gasp and a squeal. "Oh my God!" she breathed, her eyes lighting up with a terrifying, "Brilliant idea, Mom, he's actually perfect." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. I stood there, paralyzed in baby blue chiffon, my reflection in the mirror a testament to my own stupidity. Sophia's squeal and Claire's triumphant smile were more disorienting than anger ever could have been. Anger, I could understand. Disgust, I could handle. But this was uncharted territory. "Sophia, darling, why don't you go downstairs and put on a kettle for tea?" Aunt Claire said, her voice unnervingly calm and sweet. She didn't take her eyes off me. "I think we all have a few things to discuss." Sophia, looking like a cat that had just been handed a lifetime supply of cream, practically skipped out of the room. "Earl Grey," she called from the hallway. "Of course," Claire replied, before turning her full attention back to me. She stepped into the closet, the scent of her jasmine perfume suddenly suffocating. She gently took my arm. Her touch was light, but her grip was like steel. "Let's get you out of these things for now. Shall we? We'll find you something more appropriate to wear later." The words sent a chill down my spine. Later. She led me back to my pink prison of a guest room and gestured for me to sit on the edge of the canopy bed. I was still wearing Sophia's things. The shame was so intense it was a physical weight, pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. Claire pulled my jeans and boxers from the floor where I'd left them in Sophia's closet and handed them to me. "Get dressed, Ethan," she said softly. "Then come downstairs. We'll be in the sunroom." She turned and left, closing the door behind her with a gentle click that sounded as final as a cell door, locking. I ripped the nightgown off, the delicate chiffon tearing slightly at the seam. I peeled off the satin panties, the fabric clinging to my skin for a moment before letting go. I threw them on the floor as if they were on fire. I pulled on my own clothes. The rough denim of my jeans and the familiar cotton of my boxers are comforting, masculine armor. But it felt too late. The ghost of the satin was still on my skin. I could still feel it. When I went downstairs, they were waiting for me, me, Summer Senmadi in the sunroom. A bright, airy space filled with white wicker furniture and lush green plants. A tray with a delicate china teapot, 3 matching cups, and a plate of tiny cookies sat on the glass-topped table. It was a civilized, elegant scene that was completely at odds with the chaotic terror storming inside me. I stood in the doorway, unable to move. "Come in. Darling." "Sit," Claire said, patting the cushion of the chair opposite her. Sophia was curled up on a chaise lounge, scrolling through her phone. But I could feel her watching me, her eyes sparkling with amusement. I sat. My hands were shaking, so I clenched them into fists in my lap. Claire poured the tea, her movements graceful and precise. She handed me a cup. I took it, the fragile china warm against my trembling fingers. "Ethan," she began, her voice gentle but firm, "let's not beat around the bush. I'm not angry with you. Disappointed, perhaps, in the breach of privacy, but not angry." I stared into my teacup, unable to meet her gaze. "You've been having a difficult time. I know," she continued. "Your mother told me everything. The trouble at home, the poor choices in friends. It's clear you're a boy who is adrift, looking for his place." She took a delicate sip of her tea. "And today, I believe we discovered where that place might be." My head snapped up. "What? No, that wasn't. I don't know what I was doing. It was a mistake." Sophia snorted from her chaise lounge. "It didn't look like a mistake. It looked like you were having the time of your life until we walked in." "Sophia, please," Claire said, silencing her with a look. She turned back to me. "Ethan, what you did was a serious violation. You invaded a young woman's most private space. Her closet, her underwear drawer. In some circles, that would be considered a deeply disturbing act." The blood drained from my face. She was going to call my mom. She was going to tell her I was some kind of pervert. The probation officer. The court. My life was over. "However," she said, letting the word hang in the air, "I believe in constructive punishment. I believe the punishment must fit the crime." She leaned forward, her eyes locking onto mine. They were sharp, intelligent, and utterly determined. "You seem to have a certain curiosity about the feminine world, a desire to experience it for yourself. So, that will be your punishment, and your education." I just stared at her, my mind unable to process what she was saying. "For the remainder of the summer, until the day you go back to your mother, Ethan will no longer be staying with us." My heart leapt with a wild, desperate hope. She was sending me home. "Instead," she continued, dashing that hope to pieces, "I will be taking in my niece. Her name is Lily." The room was silent, save for the ticking of a grandfather clock in the hall. "Lily," the name echoed in the quiet space. "You're going to live as a girl," she stated, as if she were announcing the dinner menu. "You're going to learn what it means to be a young lady. You're going to learn poise, grace, and, most importantly, respect for feminine spaces. Because you will be inhabiting one." "You can't be serious," I whispered, my voice hoarse. "You can't do that. I won't do it." Claire's smile was thin. Razor sharp. "Oh, but I can. And you will. Because you have a choice. Ethan, option A, you embrace this opportunity. You become my darling niece. Lily, for the summer, we have a wonderful time. We go shopping. We teach you everything you need to know. And this little incident, stays our secret. Option B, you refuse. And I pick up that telephone right now, and I call your mother. I tell her that not only did her son get arrested for being an accomplice to a felony, but that I just found him in her granddaughter's closet, wearing her lingerie. Now, you tell me, how do you think that conversation will go?" Checkmate. She had me. She had me completely and utterly trapped. The thought of my mother hearing that, after everything I'd already put her through, it was unthinkable. The disappointment in her eyes would shatter me. I looked at Sophia. She was grinning now, an excited, predatory gleam in her eyes. This wasn't a punishment for her. It was the ultimate game. A real-life doll to dress up and play with. Tears of helpless frustration pricked at my eyes. I had no choice. It was consent under silk-covered duress. "Okay," I choked out, the word tasting like poison. Claire beamed, her smile instantly transforming from steel to sunshine. "Wonderful! I knew you'd see it my way." She reached into a drawer in the wicker side table and pulled out a sheet of thick, cream-colored stationery and a gold fountain pen. The paper was embossed with a pink rose at the top. "Now to make it official," she said, placing the paper and pen on the table in front of me. "We'll draw up a little agreement, a contract, if you will." Sophia was off the chaise lounge in a flash, peering over my shoulder as Claire began to write, with elegant, flowing script. She wrote out a series of bullet points. I, the undersigned, agree to live as Lily for the duration of my summer stay. I will follow all instructions related to my appearance, wardrobe, and deportment. I will refer to myself as Lily and use female pronouns. I will endeavor to learn and embody the principles of feminine grace and etiquette. Violation of this contract will result in the immediate notification of my mother regarding the circumstances of its creation. It was the most absurd, terrifying document I had ever seen. Now, Claire said, tapping the bottom of the page with her long manicured fingernail, you just need to sign it. She pointed to the line at the bottom. Right here. Darling. I looked at the line. My hand wouldn't move. What's the matter? She asked, her voice laced with feigned innocence. I can't sign that. And why not? My name is Ethan. Claire and Sophia exchanged a look. Oh, silly me, Claire said with a little laugh. Of course. You're not Ethan anymore, are you? You're Lily. She took the pen and next to the signature line. She wrote a name in her perfect cursive. Lily Rose Summers. Lily Rose Summers. It was the prettiest, most feminine name I had ever heard, and it was supposed to be mine. There, Claire said, pushing the pen back into my hand. Sign it. Lily. My stomach flipped. My hand was shaking so violently I could barely hold the pen. I looked at the name. I thought about my mom. I thought about the police car. The courtroom, the look on her face. I had no other move to make. Slowly, shakily, I put the pen to the paper. I tried to copy the flowing script Claire had written. My first attempt at the L was a jagged, ugly thing. I took a breath and started again. I wrote the I, then the L, then the Y. It was my handwriting, but it was a foreign word. I wrote Rose. I wrote Summers. The act of writing it, of forming the letters of that impossibly girly name, was a physical act of surrender, with each curve and line. I could feel Ethan slipping away, being buried under a mountain of pink stationery and floral perfume. When I was done, I stared at the signature, Lily Rose Summers. It looked like a forgery. It looked like a joke. But it was a binding contract, and it was my new name. Sophia clapped her hands together softly. Welcome to the family. Lily, she said, her smile wider and more brilliant than ever. We are going to have so much fun together. The first week of my new life as Lily was a disorienting boot camp in the art of being a girl. My old identity was systematically dismantled, piece by piece, and replaced with something new. Strange, and terrifyingly soft. Ethan's clothes were the first to go. Claire packed up all my jeans, t-shirts, and sneakers into a box and stored them in the attic. Lily won't be needing these, she'd said with an air of finality. My new wardrobe was curated by Sophia, who approached the task with the religious fervor of a high priestess. She brought armfuls of her old clothes into my room, things she'd outgrown or no longer considered fashionable. My drawers were filled with soft cotton panties in pastel shades, delicate camisoles, and sleep shorts made of silk. My closet was stocked with sundresses, skirts, and blouses that all seemed to be made of the softest, most lightweight fabrics imaginable. The first lesson was the most brutal depilation. No girl, especially not one as pretty as you're going to be, has hairy legs, Claire announced one evening after dinner. She drove me to her boutique, which was closed for the night. The front of the shop was all ballet slippers and leotards, but the back was a private spa, with a massage table and pots of wax. We're going to do a sugar wax, she explained, her voice businesslike. It's more natural than chemical waxes and gentler on the skin. Gentle was not the word I would have used. She had me strip down to a pair of disposable paper panties and lie on the table. The warm, sticky sugar paste was smoothed onto my leg, and for a second, it was actually pleasant. Then she ripped it off. Pain, sharp and blinding, exploded across my skin. I yelped, a pathetic, high-pitched sound. Oh, you're fine, darling, Claire said, completely unsympathetic. Beauty is pain. Now, hold still. Sophia was there, ostensibly for moral support, but mostly, I think, for her own amusement. She sat on a stool, filming the whole ordeal on her phone. "For posterity," she said with a wicked grin, "and to document the emergence of Lily's butterfly legs." I squeezed my eyes shut and bit my lip, tears of pain and humiliation streaming down my temples and into my hair. Strip after strip, the hair I'd had my whole life was ripped away. My legs, my arms, even the faint, downy fuzz on my chest. When it was finally over, my skin was red, angry, and screaming. Claire smoothed a cooling aloe vera gel over every inch of me, her touch surprisingly gentle now that the torture was complete. Later that night, back in my room, the stinging had subsided into a dull throb. I was lying in bed, wearing a short satin chemise, my new pajamas, and I ran a hand down my leg. The sensation stopped my breath. It was a smoothness I had never felt before. It was shocking. My skin felt like polished stone, like the satin sheets I was lying on. I bent my knee, and the feel of my calf sliding against my thigh was so alien, so incredibly slick and soft, that it made my stomach do a nervous little flip. It was the first moment I felt a flicker of something other than horror. It was a flicker of strange, disquieting pleasure. The next lesson was my voice. "Your voice is your calling card. Lily," Sophia instructed. We were in her room, and she had her phone's voice recorder on. Ethan's voice lives in his chest. It's flat and low. Lily's voice has to come from higher up. It needs to be lighter, more musical. She had me read lines from her teen magazines. 10 Ways to Know If He Is Into You. I'd read, my voice a dull monotone. "No, no, no," she'd sigh, exasperated. "Lift your pitch at the end of the sentence. Make it a little breathy. Like this." She'd repeat the line, and her voice would be an airy, melodic thing. "You sound like you're asking a question. Even when you're making a statement, it's more inviting." For hours, I repeated phrases. "Oh my God, I love your shoes. Is this gluten-free? He's so cute. I could just die." I felt like an idiot, my voice cracking as I tried to force it into a higher register. But slowly, painstakingly, a new sound began to emerge, a softer, higher version of my own voice. It didn't sound like me. It sounded like a stranger. It sounded like Lily. Posture was Claire's domain. A lady does not slouch. She would command from across the room. And I'd have to straighten my spine. She made me walk up and down the long upstairs hallway, with a book balanced on my head, hips first. "Lily, let your hips lead the way. Think of your walk as a gentle sway, not a march." I learned to sit with my knees pressed tightly together, my ankles crossed. I learned to get out of a car without flashing my underwear. I learned to gesture with my hands in a way that was graceful and delicate, not clumsy and boyish. My body, which I had taken for granted my whole life, suddenly felt like a complex piece of machinery that I had no idea how to operate. Every movement was a conscious, calculated effort. After a week of intensive training, Claire declared I was ready for my first real outfit. It was a Saturday morning, bright and sunny. Sophia laid the clothes out on my bed like a sacred offering. There were a pair of high-waisted denim shorts, a cropped lavender sweater that was so soft it felt like a cloud, and a pair of simple white canvas sneakers. "No bra for now," Sophia said, eyeing my flat chest. "The sweater is loose enough that it doesn't matter. We'll get to that later." Dressing was a new experience. The shorts zipped up the side and were snug on my waist, flaring out slightly at the hips. The effect was startling. Combined with my newly smooth, hairless legs, they seemed to go on for miles. The lavender sweater was short, showing a sliver of my stomach just above the waistband of the shorts. I looked at myself in the full-length mirror. The person staring back was a willowy, slender girl with long legs and a shy, uncertain expression. The soft color of the sweater brought out the reddish tones in my hair. I looked delicate. I looked like a girl. The sight made me feel dizzy. A confusing mix of alienation and a strange, thrilling sense of pride This wasn't Ethan in girls' clothes. This was someone new. This was Lily. The nightly ritual was the strangest, most intimate part of my transformation. Every night, after I had showered and slipped into one of the satin chemises that now served as my pajamas, Claire would come into my room to say goodnight. She would tuck the covers around me, her hands smoothing the sheets with maternal care. She would lean down and kiss my forehead, her lips soft against my skin. "Sleep, pretty. Darling," she would whisper, before turning off the light and closing the door. The first few nights, I would wait until I heard her footsteps fade down the hall, and then I would cry. I would curl into a ball under the pink canopy, the smooth satin of the chemise cool against my hot skin, and I would cry for Ethan. I missed the familiar weight of his clothes, the sound of his voice, the simple, uncomplicated way he moved through the world. I missed being a boy. But each night, the tears came a little less easily. They stopped a little faster. The comfort of Claire's goodnight kiss, the luxurious feel of the satin against my smooth skin, the soft, pretty reflection that greeted me in the mirror each morning, it was all beginning to weave a powerful spell. Ethan was a memory of a sad, scared boy in the back of a police car. Lily was something else. She was a girl who lived in a beautiful house, who wore pretty clothes, who was cared for and fussed over. She was a girl who was learning to walk and talk and exist in a world that felt softer, brighter, and infinitely more complicated. I would cry myself to sleep, missing the boy I had lost. But I was starting to wake up each morning a little more curious, and a little less terrified, to meet the girl I was becoming. After 2 weeks of relentless training within the pastel pink walls of Aunt Claire's mansion, the day of my first public outing arrived. Claire announced it over a breakfast of fruit and yogurt. "We're going to the mall this afternoon," she said, her tone light and breezy, as if she were suggesting a walk in the park and not my debut into society as a teenage girl. "Lily needs some new sandals for the summer, and we're almost out of your moisturizer." Panic, cold and immediate, coiled in my stomach. The more I squeaked, my voice automatically jumping into the higher register Sophia had drilled into me. But what if someone sees me? What if someone from my town is there? What if they recognize me? Claire reached across the table and patted my hand. "Darling, no one is going to recognize you." Ethan was a shy, slouching boy who hid under a hoodie. "Lily is a confident, lovely young woman," she smiled. "Besides, you look completely different. Trust me." Sophia, ever the practical one, was already planning the logistics. "We'll need to do your makeup. Just a little. Nothing heavy. We want natural summer glow, not going to the prom." An hour later, I was sitting on the fluffy stool at the vanity in my room, my heart hammering against my ribs. Sophia's face was inches from mine, her expression one of intense concentration. She worked with a series of brushes and sponges, her movements quick and precise. First came a tinted moisturizer that felt cool and light on my skin. It evened out my complexion and gave me a dewy look I'd only ever seen in magazines. Then, a touch of creamy pink blush was blended onto the apples of my cheeks. "Smile," Sophia commanded, and as I did, she dabbed the color on, instantly giving my face a healthier, brighter appearance. She curled my eyelashes with a scary-looking metal contraption. And with each squeeze, I flinched. A single coat of black mascara made my lashes look darker and longer, making my eyes seem bigger and more open. Finally, a slick of shimmery pink lip gloss that tasted like strawberries. She spun me around to face the mirror. I stared, speechless. It was still my face, but it was a polished, idealized version of it. The makeup was so subtle, yet the effect was dramatic. It had softened my features, highlighted my eyes, and erased the last traces of the sullen boy I had been. For my public debut, Sophia chose a simple sunflower print sundress. It had thin spaghetti straps and a fitted bodice that flared into a short, floaty skirt, paired with a pair of simple white sneakers. The outfit was cute, casual, and undeniably girly. In the car on the way to the mall, my anxiety reached a fever pitch. Every worst-case scenario played out in my mind. Someone would point and laugh. Someone would call me out, yell a slur. Someone from my past would be there, their face a mask of confusion and disgust. "Breathe, Lily," Claire said from the driver's seat, glancing at me in the rearview mirror. "Remember your posture, knees together." I forced myself to sit up straighter, to unclench my fists. I was Lily. Lily wasn't scared. Lily was going shopping for sandals. The mall was a bustling cathedral of consumerism, filled with the sounds of pop music, echoing chatter, and the scent of cinnamon buns. I walked between Claire and Sophia. My head held high, my steps measured. Just as I'd been taught. I focused on the sway of my hips. The light. Airy feel of the sundress skirt brushing against my bare legs. And then a funny thing happened. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. No one pointed. No one laughed. People glanced at me. Of course. The way people glance at everyone in a crowded mall. But their eyes slid right past me, registering me as just another teenage girl out with her mother and sister. A cashier at a coffee shop called me Miss. A man in a suit held a door open for us, his eyes flicking over me with a brief, appreciative glance before moving on. A group of teenage boys standing near a fountain stopped talking as we walked by. I saw one of them nudge his friend, his eyes fixed on me. Their stares did something complicated to my chest. It wasn't just fear. There was a spark of something else in there, a hot, prickly feeling that was part pride and part estranged. New kind of power. They weren't looking at Ethan, the awkward loser. They were looking at Lily, the pretty girl in the sunflower dress. And Lily, it turned out, was someone worth looking at. The feeling was terrifying and addictive all at once. We were in a shoe store, and I was trying on a pair of strappy leather sandals when I heard a voice call out, "Oh my God. Sophia." I froze, my blood turning to ice. I knew that voice. I looked up, and standing at the end of the aisle was Mia. Mia, my next-door neighbor from back home. Mia, my childhood friend. Mia, the girl I'd spent countless summers with, building forts and scraping our knees together. She was a sporty tomboy, always in shorts and a tank top. Her brown hair usually pulled back in a messy ponytail. And she was here. My worlds were colliding. "Mia, hey," Sophia said, her own surprise looking completely genuine. "What are you doing here?" "My family's visiting my grandparents for the week. They live just a town over," Mia said, her eyes bright and curious. Then her gaze shifted from Sophia to Claire, and then to me. Her brows furrowed in confusion for a split second. She did a double take, her head tilting slightly. I held my breath, waiting for the moment of recognition, the accusation, the horrified gasp. It never came. Instead, her face broke into a wide, friendly grin. She looked at me, then back at Sophia. "Is this your cousin you were telling me about, the one staying with you for the summer?" I realized Sophia must have laid the groundwork, must have mentioned me in texts or calls. She was a master strategist. "It is," Sophia said smoothly, putting an arm around my shoulder. "Mia, this is my cousin. Lily. Lily, this is Mia." My heart was a hummingbird in my chest. I forced a small, shy smile. "Hi," I managed to say, my voice coming out soft and a little breathless, just like we'd practiced. Mia's grin widened. "Lily, it's so great to meet you. Sophia's told me so much about you." And then she did something that completely short-circuited my brain. She lunged forward and wrapped me in a tight, enthusiastic hug. It was a classic Mia hug, all wiry strength and genuine warmth, but this time, it was different. My body was different. Her arms were wrapped around my back, her chest pressed against mine. I could feel the thin fabric of her tank top and the firm line of the sports bra she wore underneath. The contact was electric, intimate in a way a hug between two boys never could be. She smelled like sunscreen and clean sweat. The hug lasted maybe 3 seconds, but it felt like an eternity. She pulled back, still smiling, completely oblivious to the crimson blush that I could feel flooding my face and neck. "Wow," You are super pretty, Mia said, her tone matter of fact, like she was commenting on the weather. Sophia wasn't kidding. I just stammered something that might have been a thank you. We chatted for a few more minutes, Mia doing most of the talking, telling us about her grandparents and complaining about the summer heat. All the while, her eyes kept darting back to me. A friendly, open curiosity in them. She treated me like she'd treat any of her other girlfriends. She included me in the conversation, asked me a question about my dress, and when she finally had to go meet her parents, she gave my arm a friendly squeeze. We should all hang out before I go back, she said. I'll text you. Soph, it was so nice meeting you, Lily. And then she was gone. I sank back onto the shoe-fitting stool, my legs feeling like they were about to give out. I had done it. I had passed. Not just with strangers, but with someone who knew me. Someone who knew Ethan. And she hadn't seen a trace of him. She had only seen Lily. Sophia leaned down, her mouth close to my ear. See, she whispered, a triumphant smirk in her voice. What did we tell you? I looked at my reflection in the store mirror. A pretty flushed girl in a sunflower dress stared back at me, her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and exhilaration. For the first time, I wasn't just playing a part. For the first time, looking at that girl in the mirror, I felt a flicker of recognition. For the first time, I saw myself. I saw Lily. The last 2 weeks of August were hot, hazy, and thick with the scent of chlorine and cut grass. It was the peak of summer, and Sophia decided to mark the occasion by throwing a massive end-of-summer pool party. It's going to be epic, she announced one morning, tapping away on her phone as she curated the guest list. Basically, everyone from my grade, plus the swim team, and a few others, at least 80 people. 80 people. The thought made my stomach clench. I had survived them all. But that was a transient, anonymous experience. This would be different. This would be hours of sustained social interaction, with boys, with girls, with people my age who would be looking at me, talking to me, judging me. And then the true horror of the situation dawned on me. A pool party meant swimwear. I don't have a swimsuit, I stammered, the excuse sounding lame even to my own ears. Sophia looked up from her phone, a slow, mischievous smile spreading across her face. Oh, don't you worry about that. Lily, she said, we're going shopping tomorrow. The swimwear section of the department store was a nightmare landscape of string bikinis and high-cut one-pieces. It was a sea of lycra and spandex designed to cling to and reveal every curve of the female body. My body. My flat-chested, narrow-hipped, fundamentally male body. The panic I felt was so intense it was almost paralyzing. How could I possibly wear one of these? They would see. Everyone would see. Aunt Claire seemed to sense my terror. She steered me away from the main racks toward a more exclusive, boutique section of the store. We're not going to find what you need out here. Darling, she said in a low, conspiratorial voice. You need something a little more specialized. Over the next few days, a series of discreetly packaged boxes began to arrive at the house. Claire and Sophia presented them to me one evening in my room, laying the contents out on my bed as if preparing for a sacred ceremony. The first box contained what looked like 2 teardrop-shaped pieces of flesh-colored gelatin. Silicone breast forms, Claire explained, picking one up. It had a surprising weight to it, and it jiggled slightly, unnervingly lifelike. These are professional grade, the kind actors use. They're a C-cup. We don't want to go too crazy. Just enough to give you a natural shape in a swimsuit. My mind reeled. This was a whole new level of transformation. This wasn't just clothes and makeup. This was changing the very shape of my body. The attachment scene was intimate and surreal. Claire had me lie down on my bed, on top of the silk sheets. Sophia was there, a silent observer, watching with keen interest. The atmosphere was almost clinical, like a doctor's office, but also deeply personal. We have to warm the medical adhesive first, Claire said, rubbing a small tube between her palms. Her voice was calm and reassuring, the voice of an expert. It's hypoallergenic and perfectly safe for the skin. It will hold them in place even in the water. She had me take off my shirt, and I lay there, my flat, pale chest exposed. I felt incredibly vulnerable. She squeezed a thin layer of the clear, odorless adhesive onto my skin, just below my collarbones. Her fingers were cool and gentle as she spread it in a smooth, even circle. "All right, deep breath. Darling," she said. She picked up one of the silicone forms. It felt cool against my skin for a split second. And then she pressed it into place. The sensation was bizarre. There was the initial stickiness of the adhesive, and then a sudden, surprising weight. It was a heaviness that tugged on my chest skin, a constant, physical presence that wasn't there before. She repeated the process on the other side. "Okay. Sit up slowly," she instructed. I pushed myself up, and the new weight settled on my chest. I took a breath, and I could feel them move with me. A subtle, pendulous shift. I looked down, where my chest had been flat just minutes before. There were now two soft, perfectly shaped mounds. I had breasts. Sophia handed me a small hand mirror. I stared at my new reflection, my new silhouette. It was shocking. It was transformative. A part of me was horrified, but another, larger part was utterly fascinated. The next item was less glamorous, but even more crucial. It was a strange-looking undergarment made of a thick, nude-colored, elastic fabric. "This," Claire said, holding it up, "is a custom gaff. It's designed for dancers, and for situations like this. It will keep everything tucked away and smooth. It's essential for wearing a bikini." Learning to put it on was an awkward, clinical process. Claire explained the mechanics of tucking with a frankness that left no room for embarrassment. The gaff was tight, a cool, compressive force that smoothed out my anatomy, creating a perfectly flat feminine line. It felt incredibly restrictive, a constant reminder of the anatomy I was trying so desperately to conceal. I stood in front of the full-length mirror, wearing only the gaff and my new breasts. The illusion was staggering. The flat, smooth front, the new curves on my chest. I looked in the mirror and saw the impossible. I saw the body of a girl. Finally, it was time for the swimsuit itself. Sophia had picked it out. It was a one-piece, a beautiful mint green color, with a halter top that tied behind the neck and delicate ruffles along the neckline. I slipped it on. The lycra was cool and snug, hugging my body in a second skin. I tied the halter straps, adjusting the fit. The fabric stretched over my new breasts, creating a gentle, natural-looking cleavage. The cut of the suit on the hips, combined with the smoothness from the gaff, gave me the illusion of a gentle, feminine curve. I turned to face the mirror, and the reflection that met my eyes made the breath catch in my throat. It was me, but it wasn't. It was Lily. A complete, fully formed Lily. She had hips. She had cleavage. She had long, smooth legs. She was wearing a pretty green swimsuit, and she looked real. She looked like she belonged at a pool party. She looked beautiful. A tear escaped my eye and trickled down my cheek. Then another. I wasn't crying from shame or humiliation. I wasn't crying from fear. I was crying from a profound, overwhelming sense of shock and a strange, unexpected wave of relief. The disguise was perfect. The illusion was complete. For the first time, I looked in the mirror and I didn't see a boy in a costume. I saw a girl, and for a terrifying, exhilarating moment, I didn't want to look away. The day of the party. Our backyard transformed. What was usually a serene expanse of green lawn and calm blue water became a vibrant, chaotic hub of teenage life. A DJ set up speakers by the patio, pumping out a bass-heavy summer playlist. Brightly colored inflatable swans and flamingos drifted lazily across the pool. The air was thick with the smells of sunscreen, chlorine, and barbecue smoke. There had to be 80 people there, a swirling, laughing, shouting mass of bikinis and swim trunks. I stood by the French doors leading out to the patio, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. I was wearing the mint green swimsuit, with a white lace cover-up thrown over it. My auburn hair was tied up in a loose, messy bun, with a few tendrils escaping to frame my face. Sophia had insisted on a light, waterproof makeup application, a bit of bronze on my eyelids, waterproof mascara, and a tinted lip balm. I felt like an actor standing in the wings, waiting for my cue, about to step onto a stage for the most important performance of my life. "You look amazing." "Lily," Sophia whispered, giving my shoulder a squeeze. "Now get out there and mingle." She gave me a gentle push, and I stumbled out into the blinding sunlight and the wall of sound. For a few minutes, I just hovered awkwardly by the food table, pretending to be intensely interested in a bowl of potato salad. I felt every eye in the place on me, even though I knew it was just my paranoia. Then, a voice cut through the noise. "You're Sophia's cousin, right, Lily?" I turned to see a boy smiling at me. He was tall, with broad shoulders, sun-bleached brown hair, and a lazy, confident grin that seemed to take up his whole face. He was holding a red plastic cup and wearing nothing but a pair of low-slung swim trunks. He was, I realized with a jolt, Ryan, the captain of the high school swim team. Sophia had a picture of him on her desk. Yeah. Hi, I said, my voice coming out a little higher than I intended. "I'm Ryan," he said, his eyes crinkling at the corners. They were a startlingly bright blue. "I've heard about you." He didn't elaborate, just kept smiling that killer smile. He had a way of looking at you that made you feel like you were the only person at the party. "You're not going to swim?" he asked, nodding toward the crowded pool. "Maybe later," I said, clutching the edges of my cover-up. "Just getting used to the crowd." "I get that," he said. "Well, if you need someone to save you from a giant inflatable flamingo, you know who to call." He gave me a little wink and then sauntered off toward the pool, diving in with a clean, athletic splash. His simple friendly interaction was enough to break the ice of my fear. I took a deep breath, grabbed a can of soda, and started to drift through the party. Sophia introduced me to a few of her friends, a gaggle of pretty, bubbly girls who immediately accepted me into their circle, complimenting my swimsuit and asking where I was from. I repeated the well-rehearsed cover story. I was from a small town up north, staying with my aunt for the summer to get a change of scenery. It was true enough. After an hour, the heat became oppressive. I finally shed my cover-up, my movements self-conscious, and slipped into the pool. The water was a cool, welcome shock. I waded over to an empty flamingo raft and clumsily hauled myself onto it, my new breasts feeling strangely buoyant in the water. I floated there for a long time, drifting on the gentle currents created by the other swimmers. My face turned up to the sun, the warmth on my skin, the cool water lapping just underneath the raft, the distant thumping of the music. It was all strangely peaceful. I felt the sun on my new, exposed cleavage and the way the water clung to the fabric of my swimsuit. For a few minutes, I forgot to be scared. I just was a girl floating on a flamingo raft at a summer pool party. It felt impossibly normal. Need some help with that. I opened my eyes. Ryan was treading water beside my raft, his wet hair slicked back from his forehead, that easy smile back on his face. He was holding a bottle of sunscreen. "You're going to fry out here," he said. "Your back is already getting pink." "Oh," I said, trying to twist around to see. I guess I should have. "Here, let me," he offered. Before I could protest, he hoisted himself up to sit on the edge of the raft behind me, causing it to rock precariously. "Hold still." He squeezed a cool dollop of lotion onto his hand, and then, his hands were on my back. His touch was warm and firm. My entire body went rigid. His palms smoothed the lotion over my shoulders, his thumbs brushing against the delicate string ties of my halter top. The contact was light, respectful, but it sent an electric jolt straight through me. I had never been touched like that before. Not by a boy. Not as a girl. My stomach erupted in a fluttery. Chaotic dance. Butterflies. My first real girl butterflies. "There," he said, his voice a low rumble just behind my ear. "All set." He slid back into the water. "You should be careful. A girl with skin like yours burns easily." As the sun began to set, the party transitioned. The DJ switched to a more mellow, down-tempo playlist. Someone turned on the colored lights in the pool. And tiki torches were lit around the patio, casting a warm, flickering glow over everything. A slow, dreamy song started to play. Something by Lana Del Rey. People started to pair off, swaying gently to the music on the patio. Ryan appeared at my side as if from nowhere. "Dance with me," he asked, holding out a hand. My mind screamed no, but my body betrayed me. I found myself nodding, placing my hand in his. He led me to a clear spot by the edge of the pool. He put one hand on the small of my back, right at the spot where the fabric of my swimsuit dipped low. His other hand held mine. We swayed to the music, his body close to mine. I was acutely aware of everything: the warmth of his hand on my bare skin, the faint smell of chlorine on him, the way the pool lights reflected in his eyes. He leaned in, his mouth close to my ear. "You know," he whispered, his voice a warm breath against my skin. "I'm not lying when I say you're the prettiest girl here. Lily." And for 3 full, uninterrupted, magical minutes, I believed him. I wasn't Ethan. I wasn't a boy in a costume. I was Lily, a pretty girl, dancing with a handsome boy by the pool on a warm summer night, and it was the most wonderful, terrifying feeling in the world. Just as the song was ending, a figure detached itself from the shadows. It was Mia. She pulled me aside, her grip on my arms surprisingly strong. "Hey," she said, her voice a low, urgent whisper. There was a worried, almost jealous look in her eyes. "Listen, be careful with that one. Ryan's a great guy, but he's a heartbreaker. He goes through girls like, well, like water." I was about to say something, to defend him or myself, but she softened, her expression changing. A genuine concern replaced the jealousy. "I'm just looking out for you," she said, her voice quiet now. She reached up and gently tucked a stray strand of hair behind my ear. Her fingers lingered for a fraction of a second on my cheek, her touch soft and warm. "You're new here. You don't know how these guys operate." Her touch was so different from Ryan's. It wasn't electric or thrilling. It was comforting, grounding. A strange and complicated warmth spread through my chest, a warmth I didn't understand at all. She gave me a small, sad smile and then melted back into the party, leaving me standing by the glowing pool, my heart a confused and chaotic mess. I had survived the party. I had passed the ultimate test. But as I stood there, the ghost of Ryan's hand on my back and the lingering warmth of Mia's fingers on my cheek, I realized the illusion I had so carefully constructed was becoming more real and far more complicated than I had ever imagined. The morning after the party. The house was unnaturally quiet. The only evidence of the previous night's chaos was a faint smell of chlorine and a few stray plastic cups sitting on the kitchen counter. I woke up late, tangled in my silk sheets, my body tired from the swimming and the dancing, my mind a jumbled collage of flickering tiki torches, Ryan's blue eyes, and Mia's worried frown. I felt as different. The memory of the party, of being seen and accepted as Lily, had settled deep inside me. It was a warm, glowing ember in the pit of my stomach. I padded into the ensuite bathroom, my bare feet silent on the cool tile floor. The sun was streaming through the window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. I caught my reflection in the large, gold-framed mirror over the sink, and I stopped. My hair was a tangled mess from sleep. My face was bare of any makeup, and I was wearing a simple peach-colored silk baby doll nightie. But that's not what caught my eye. It was the lines. Perfectly etched onto my skin were the unmistakable tan lines of a girl. There were two pale, sharp triangles over my chest, a ghostly outline of where my halter top had been, stark against the golden tan of my shoulders and décolletage. Lower down, on my hips, were the high-cut, curved lines of the bikini bottom, a pale whisper of skin against the sun-kissed tan of my stomach and thighs. I stared, my heart beginning to pound. A slow, heavy drumbeat of dread. This wasn't makeup that could be washed off. This wasn't a costume that could be taken off. This was on me. It was a physical, semi-permanent record of the person I had become. It was Lily, printed directly onto my skin. Absolute, gut-wrenching panic seized me. I had 2 weeks left. 2 weeks until I was supposed to get on a bus and go back home. Back to my mom. Back to my old school. Back to being Ethan. How could I go back? How could I walk into a boy's locker room with the tan lines of a girl's swimsuit emblazoned on my body? How could I wear a t-shirt without the pale triangles on my chest showing through? How could I put on Ethan's clothes and pretend that Lily, and this entire summer, had never happened? The ember of warmth in my stomach was extinguished, replaced by a cold, sickening dread. The illusion had become too real. The costume had fused to my skin. I stumbled back into my room and sank onto the edge of the bed, my head in my hands. I couldn't go back, but I couldn't stay here forever either. I was trapped between two lives, two identities, and suddenly, I didn't know which one was the costume anymore. A soft knock on the door made me jump. "Lily, darling, are you awake?" It was Aunt Claire. She came in, carrying a cup of tea, looking as fresh and elegant as always. She took one look at my face, at the panic in my eyes, and her expression softened with a knowing sympathy. She set the tea on the nightstand and sat beside me on the bed. "What is it?" "Sweetheart," she asked gently. The words tumbled out of me in a panicked rush. "The tan lines," I whispered, my voice thick with unshed tears. "Claire, look at me. How am I supposed to go home? What am I supposed to do? Everyone will see. Everyone will know." She didn't seem surprised. She simply reached out and took my hand, her grip warm and steady. "Sweetheart," she began, her voice calm and soothing. "Some summers are just summers, and some summers change you forever. This was one of those summers." She looked at me, her eyes full of a strange mixture of pride and compassion. We always knew this was a possibility. You can't go through an experience like this and expect to come out the other side completely unchanged. "But what do I do?" I pleaded, my voice breaking. "For now, you do nothing," she said firmly. "You breathe. You have 2 more weeks of being Lily. We will enjoy them, and when the time comes to think about the future, we'll figure it out. Together." She squeezed my hand. "Going back to being Ethan might not be the only option on the table. We'll talk to your mother. We'll find a path that works. But you are not alone in this." Her words didn't solve the problem, but they calmed the raging storm inside me. The idea that there might be other options, a third path I hadn't even considered, was a tiny pinprick of light in the darkness. After she left, I stood in front of the full-length mirror again. I was still wearing the peach silk baby doll, my hair still a mess. I looked at the girl in the reflection, really looked at her. I saw the fear in her eyes, the confusion, but I also saw the new confidence in the way she stood, the softness in her features, the faint sun-kissed glow on her skin. My hand came up, trembling, and my fingers traced the pale triangle over my breast. I followed the line down, over my stomach, to the delicate, curved line on my hip. These lines were a map of my summer, a map of my transformation. I leaned closer to the mirror, until my breath misted the glass. I looked into my own eyes, Lily's eyes, and I whispered the question that had been hiding in the deepest corner of my heart all summer long. "I don't know how to go back." I breathed. The words a ghost of a sound in the quiet room. My fingers continued their trembling exploration of the tan lines. A silent admission of a terrifying truth. And I don't know if I want to. Later that night, as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling and contemplating the impossible question of my own future, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was a new phone, one Claire had bought for Lily, but a few of my old contacts had been transferred over. I picked it up. A new text message glowed on the screen. It was from a number I recognized instantly. It was from Mia. "Meet me at the lake dock tonight. I need to tell you something when no one else is listening.